So let's start. Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today at the panel discussion on AgriTech and Smart Farming in Eurasia. My name is Kateryna Poberezhna. I work as an Agribusiness Project Manager at the EBRD and have an honor to moderate this discussion. Agriculture technology, or AgTech, is associated with the use of digital technologies in farming with aim to improve yield, efficiency, profitability, and at the same time making food production safer and more environmentally friendly. Rapid development of modern technologies such as digitalization, precision agriculture, artificial intelligence, robotization, drones, and gradual movement of agriculture indoor help reduce production risk, use of chemicals, food losses, and environmental impact, and make the food safer, healthier, and more accessible to consumers. It also reduces the weather impact and helps quickly to adapt to climate change. Which explains why should we invest in AgTech. Now let's understand who and how. During the next 1 hour, we will try to answer questions. What significant projects in the AgTech are being implemented today in Moldova, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan? What is the role of local startups in the digital transformation of agro-industry? How can governments, international organizations, and development sectors support the digital transformation in agriculture? To help answer those questions, with us today is Marat Beksultanov, Director of AgriTech Hub Kazakhstan. He manages research teams working in flood management, rangeland health assessment, and water resource management. Marat has conducted an assessment of the state natural resources in Kazakhstan region using satellite remote sensing technology, machine learning, and drone images. Also, Yuriy Petruk, AgTech evangelist, agri-food consultant, startup community contributor, and the head of the board of AgTech Ukraine. He is advising to the president of Ukrainian Agribusiness Club on agrimeteorology, irrigation, automation, hardware, phytomonitoring, and precision farming, of course. Also, Zikrillo, Akhror-Murod, who is the specialist with an extensive experience in supply management. He is the head of marketing department in the RealSoft, which is one of the biggest IT companies in Uzbekistan. And Nemciuc. She is ecosystem builder from Tekwill, startup Moldova. She is focused on growing startup ecosystem and connects entrepreneurs, investors, community, academia, corporates, and provides opportunities for them. So while there are enormous developments in AgTech globally, we would like to learn more about our region. According to recent FAO and EBRD joint report on digital agriculture, about 80% of Ukrainian farmers who farm on more than 500 hectares, which is about 85% of agricultural land in Ukraine, are interested to adopt precision agriculture technologies and other innovative technologies in grain production. So, dear panelists, I would like to open the floor with the question, how AgTech sector develops in your respective country or region, and what is the trend? How big is the business opportunity in your country? So it will be also nice if you could provide examples of successful projects in AgTech. I invite Marat Beksultanov to share his presentation and open the floor.
Thank you, Kateryna. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, that was a really good intro, and the AgTech technology is, it's nice to see that AgTech technology is developing in the former Soviet Union, area. And the key challenge in my view is that in many AgTech applications that are targeted by startups, they fail to see the ability to pay by the farmer. Farmers, for the most part, at least in the Central Asia where we work, are not, by and large, are not able to pay or sustain a subscription model or a traditional model that is more successful in countries like Netherlands, USA, or Germany, and more developed countries. And be farmers in for the most part in the former Soviet Union, farmers still produce low value crops, unlike countries of Western Europe and USA and North America. So that puts a dilemma of where do you put your development effort and who do you serve as a market. And the only other option that is left is the government, because government is responsible for distributing subsidies, supporting farming development, and actually they're the policymakers who determine in which direction this agricultural sector gets developed. So we took a view of that, that we need to support and develop tools and technologies that support policymakers, on a large scale. And with your permission, I'd like to go over a specific example of what we've done in Kazakhstan. So we're targeting water consumption and water productivity in farming. As you know, up to 70% of surface water is used by farming, and that's a huge sector that is consuming large quantities of water. And at the same time, government is by and large using old and outdated methods of managing that water use, and especially water productivity. And when we talk about water productivity, it is often measured in terms of quantity of water consumed, but very rarely in terms of how much product or output do you produce per unit of water. So, but in reality, when we talk about water in countries that are dependent on surface water, supply, like Kazakhstan, we are actually talking about tradable value of water. So when you're exporting any sort of agricultural product, you're in fact exporting water, and success or failure of your agricultural policy. So traditionally, what we see in policymaking is this square. So a government, local government supplying water to the farming community is able to measure the outflow of water into the system, but it's very rarely focusing on how that water is used per per field by the farmers, and how much of the water or how much of the water we're using beneficially. In other words, irrigation in many cases remains a black box. So we're supplying this huge amount of water to the farms through surface canals or other irrigation means, and we're consuming beneficially part of it, but a lot of it is consumed in a non-beneficial form: evaporation, filtration, surface runoff, and all that other stuff. That so how do we measure this? And when you confront a policymaker and you ask them these questions, nobody can tell you what's happening. But when you design an irrigation system on a large scale as a government, you should be targeting three main pillars. First is efficiency. Are you giving enough water to the farmer so they can supply the plants and meet their physical demands on a regular basis and sufficiently? Then adequacy. Are you supplying fields in the farming community with enough water on a regular basis and reliably? And then, most importantly, this part, productivity. When you design an irrigation system, are you measuring water productivity? Are you getting the most yields or crop per drop that you can actually get in that community? So With that being said, this are basically the three pillars of the sustainable development of agricultural land in the region. That farmers who consume water efficiency, less water, and produce more crop per given unit of water, and do it in a reliable and predictable manner, are able to sustain their fields for a longer period of time. They avoid salination, land degradation, and they get better yields. Therefore, they're getting more money, and they are able to sustain their respective communities for a longer time. So job creation and all that good stuff that happens with that. So that's all good, but how do we measure it? One way to do it is we can install sensors on every field, but that's expensive. Everybody knows that. Luckily, there are technologies today that can help you determine per field water consumption and water productivity based on data. So without going into technical details too much, this is based on parameter called evapotranspiration, which basically measures the transpiration from plants and evaporation from soil, and based on that you can capture that information from satellites. So this is an example of a large-scale assessment of water use. This is applied water for the entirety of Turkestan region. So you see this area is very large. To install a sensor on every one of these fields will be unfeasible, but we can measure water consumption on a regional pixel by pixel basis very accurately using satellite technology. But that's just the first step. So when you take it, let me just switch my presentation real quick to a live demo, if you don't mind. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this is one of the rayons or sub-regions of Turkestan Oblast. We can zoom in using our platform, and you can see that we are able to measure on a field by field basis water consumption at every field in units of millimeters or cubic meters, or so basically that tells you how much water each farmer is using per field per season, and immediately you can see that it's not equal for all. Some farmers are using more, some farmers, the yellow, are not getting enough water. So as a policymaker, okay, and then we are able to switch parameters and then check out the efficiency of irrigation. Efficiency means are farmers supplying enough water to their plants throughout the season to meet their physical demands? In other words, are they underwatering plants or overwatering plants? By and large, you can see we're building a histogram here that by and large they're not. So if you run this system, there's a massive amount of water that gets consumed. In this case, it's 14 million cubic meters per season in just this one area. Okay, but the farmers are not using it efficiently. Why? So that could be because they're either they don't have efficient irrigation systems, okay, and they're not able to deliver water to their fields efficiently, or they just don't care. The water is cheap, so they do it as they want. So that's the question that you need to ask as a policymaker. Okay, then we can look at the factor that's called biomass productivity. So in this case, we can quickly filter out fields that are not producing high yields, and then we can filter out fields that are producing very high yields compared to other farmers. So these guys are doing something right. Okay, they're producing more kilos, centers, tons per hectare using same irrigation system than others, okay? And these are laggards that are consuming way too much water, and they're producing, very poor yields. And if you look at the histogram again, the distribution is not very equal, okay? So majority of the farmers in this particular area are not producing enough high yields. So there goes, a question to a policymaker. Do we keep subsidizing this bad, practice and farmer practice? Do we need to maybe revise our subsidy policy and then encourage people who produce more and use water more efficiently?
So
yeah,
I understand that this system is already with the government of Kazakhstan. It's already in work, right?
In Turkestan region, yes, it's used by the local government to devise, a better policy for water resource, distribution and management.
Very good.
So, do I have more time or?
Well, I would like also to give a possibility in other speakers too.
Okay, so I need, I'm wrapping up. It's 2 minutes. So, two last, key takeaways is this is the efficiency of the irrigation system itself. Okay, so a lot of these fields are fed by surface irrigation, surface, canals, and if you look at this, histogram and the map, you see that, by and large, they're getting water. Water gets to them on a regular basis and predictably. So, there's very few issues with the, irrigation system itself. Yeah, it's the practices, farming practices that are, a problem. And then the last, one, and that's how I'm gonna wrap it up. We combine all these previous factors, applied water, we're combining efficiency, we're combining the, use of irrigation system, and now we can figure out what we call champion farmers. And champion farmers are those who produce more yields per unit of water, sustainably, reliably, year after year. And then if you filter them out as a government, as a policymaker, these are the clusters that you can develop. These are the clusters of hyper, sustainable users that you need to encourage, and then maybe devise a policy that other farmers look up to them, and then they're doing something right. They may be growing more water efficient crops. They're maybe using more water efficient irrigation systems like drip irrigation or pivot irrigation or something that, that makes them competitively more adept at using water. And as a bank or as an international financial institution, next time, if you're, when you're financing a water irrigation project, maybe you should be looking at, these parameters as well, because then, you reduce your risk of non-performing loan because, it was a bad irrigation policy that was, put in place. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up and, give floor to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was very interesting, very nicely shows how government can and a potential investor can also make informed decision based on this technology. I know that Yuriy Petruk works a lot with private sector and has an extensive experience in precision farming technologies. So how it's going in Ukraine, Yuriy?
Yes, I would try to make it kind of a brief overview how it moves on in Ukraine, as I am participating in this area from 2008. So I've seen a bit of evolution of precision agriculture and related technologies in Ukraine. And for the last 5 years, we were pushing this growth forward. And now we got some results. Actually, I am without a presentation. Unfortunately, I didn't know about this option. So I would be trying to explain it literally with only words. Actually, drivers of precision farming and all technology adoption in Ukraine are mostly either big agri holdings with hundreds or tens of thousands hectares, or kind of not small, but few thousands of hectares, medium-sized companies, where the owner could enforce the movement or implementation of every technology is pretty fast. Actually, why big companies are drivers? Because they got investments budgets to experiment with the technologies. And actually, those smaller farmers, they are not available for those financing leverage to experiment a lot. Regarding the technologies popularization, the most popular are still technologies which repay pretty much fast. So those are mostly things which could be repaid in up to 2 or 3 years. In the top, we still got fuel consumption and GPS tracking monitoring for the farming machinery to prevent stillage of the fuels. Unfortunately, it's a big problem here in Ukraine, and I suppose for the rest of CS region, it could be a problem too. One of the technologies which is really booming for the last 3 years is satellite imagery, because we get a lot of companies here in Ukraine which really leverage on those technologies. So we use both free satellite imagery from Landsat Sentinel satellites, and there are a lot of options from paid satellites like Planet Labs and so on. So this is used now, I would say, on every 5th hectare in Ukraine for sure. So like more than 20% of land are monitored with the satellite monitoring regularly, and at least once a year, I suppose up to 40% are doing this check. Regarding the drone monitoring, it's also developing pretty fast, and for the last 2 years we got a huge evolution of drone application for pesticides and chemicals, because previously it was not really feasible with economic like no economic clear benefit, but now with entrance of like bigger more industrial drones from DJI and XAG, we got like almost 20 companies almost in every region of Ukraine which got a park of drones for rental for spraying. And as you told, Marat, irrigation is given a huge challenge, not only for the Kazakhstan, also for Ukraine in southern regions, and technologies for the drip irrigation and water saving irrigation, underground irrigation are also evolving here. We got in Ukraine a few companies which are dealing with fertigation equipment. So when you could mix all the fertilizers and the pesticides into the irrigation water, so we got a few like producers here in Ukraine who produce this equipment, and also they produce fertigation stations like for mixers for big sprayers. The way we treat chemical treatment of the fields is changing for the last like 2-3 years dramatically. The drones are going in and they're going in like rapidly fast, and the way of monitoring of pesticides use and concentration measurements is also like moving forward. Regarding the software technologies, now in Ukraine we got like really a bunch of free software products like farm management systems, where even a small farmer could monitor their land banks, their fields, to manage their like equipment utilization and so on and so forth, which is before the precision farming stage could be really used easily and almost free in most of cases. for the small landholders, and for the big companies, they are usually trying to either make an evolution of existing systems or write their own field management software. The big and really good example is a kernel agro-holding, which created even a program for cooperation with smaller farmers. It's called Open Agribusiness. And in terms of this cooperation with small landholders, they provide the education for the farmers. They provide technologies and instructions how to use it really like normally, and they this way increase their ability to get like needed quality of the yields and needed amounts of the yields. And the kernel is interested in this cooperation because they use those small landholders like grain suppliers. So they are a big grain exporter also. So basically the farmer got a technology stack. They got also an ability to buy all the inputs cheaper, in a cheaper way. They got the best practice experience and some consultancy, and at the end they're able to sell their crops on a pretty much market price with a forward contracting. Regarding the startups, like the startup scene is actually growing on in Ukraine for the last 2 years. I would not say rapidly, but in agricultural field, every year we see like from 20 to 40 new projects. Maybe there are more. We are like not for sure ever about every one of those. But for the last 2 years in Ukraine, we got an active Ukrainian startup fund, which is given non-repayable, how it's called, like not donations, but like what?
Grant.
Yeah, grants for sure. Yes, they're giving grants to startups, and they are doing it like every 2 or 3 weeks. I don't remember for sure, but in every batch there are from 1 to 3 companies which are dealing with AgTech technologies. So the percentage of AgTech startups in these successful cases is pretty big. So like around like 15 to 20% are agricultural startups. Regarding like what's we missing here in Ukraine, we are actually missing things with sensors. Because last year, when the COVID wave started, everybody who were dealing with sensor technologies started to feel pretty much a deficit of all the like small elements they use, all the electronic elements that they were importing from is still an issue in Ukraine. For like the last year, there are a few initiatives for building own sensors and own production of those like super small parts like condensers and so on. It's still a problem, but we are moving forward to replace the imported parts with national developed parts. I'm not sure, Marat, was it the case for the Kazakhstan with irrigation automation? Because actually my like education and background is irrigation automation also. So I understand how many sensors should be used to really control the irrigation normally. I actually get a question about like, do you use only satellite data, or you also use the data from the controllers?
Yeah, the last year was challenging for a lot of industries, including agriculture, and so this disruption of the supply chain put a lot of farmers and producers in a very tight spot. With starting with supply issues with equipment and like I said, critical parts of the machinery down to very basic things like fertilizers, chemicals and things like that. So. The answer to the second part of your question, whether we use sensors on the ground or not, yet we do only to ground truth, for ground truthing, to verify the accuracy of our assessment on the ground. So because what we do is we measure the water productivity based on satellite imagery, and then we train our system based on the ground results, that we collect from select sample sites. So that allows us to verify the accuracy of assessment of what we're seeing from the satellite imagery.
Okay, I understand.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I got 2 more comments. If I have time still, or not really?
Oh, yeah. You don't have time.
No.
But like 1 minute.
Okay, for 1 minute, the 2 more technologies which are rapidly growing in Ukraine. First one is everything which is related to automation of driving. So all the autopiloting and and parallel driving is booming, and even super small farmers are buying this equipment because the precision, like manual wheeling, is not a case already. And for the last year, the super active segment is projects for different land sell or land monitoring or land bank monitoring, because in Ukraine finally opened the land market for agricultural lands from the 1st of July. So super recently, and there are pretty much a boom of projects who are dealing in this area, because at the moment it's is interesting part of the market. Actually, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for specifying the small farmers, because it was also my question to you. Does it mean that, well, we know that agro holdings are mostly investing and they have their R&D departments and budget and so on. Does this mean that small farmers won't be able to utilize this technology? And thank you for answering that they are. And now to Moldova, who has a lot of smallholder farmers. And Mari, how things are going there and what technologies are adopted by farmers? Are there any hurdles in the adoption of AgTech? And what startups do you support?
Thank you very much, and happy to see especially Yuriy, because Ukraine was and is almost for us a good example, and we had even a consultancy from Yuriy and speaker at our conference that we are organized on AgTech. Well, if to compare, Moldova is really super small comparing with other actors here. It's like only 34 approximately square meters. That means that here we don't have such holdings or big companies, and support are going through donors. And I will tell the story from technology part of view, because we are Tekwill, and the programs that are supporting startups, it's Startup Moldova, and we are supported by 2 main donors, USAID and Sweden government, and we connected with other program that also mostly on developing agriculture, also supported by USAID. And that means that 2 of us started during the pandemic program related to support traditional sectors, as well as traditional sectors connected with IT industry. And through innovation, increasing the use of digital, we're trying to support cross-sector collaboration and retain and create new jobs, new opportunities. And here we launched a program that's called Digital Impact to help real sectors. And we, as a donor organization, it's taking everything by procedures. And here we understand the main challenges, again, during the pandemic. One of them are a solution for beekeepers. That it's a national tool to avoid chemical
pollution.
No, to prevent poisoning, yes. And another solution, as also nationwide, is supporting and doing a bibliothèque, because if having different skills, different programs, we understand that almost more donors are supporting by knowledge, and we're taking everything in a library and doing a national bibliothèque to support farmers, again, by knowledge. Because previously we tried to have a collaboration with Microsoft, and we organized a Microsoft IoT lab, especially to support startups, to grow startups, increase the number of digitalized and Internet of Things, but understand that it's too early. Because we don't have such market, we don't have such knowledge or where to test that. And now, again, collaboration with HBA, with this program, we started to support mostly digitalizing agriculture. And a key factor is the shortage of skilled labor, and because high productivity is needed mostly in covering the employees in companies, and that means that even farmers or local companies mostly focused on digitalized don't have employees don't know how to train them. And here we organize 2 batches of AgTech Academy, and we focus on digitalization, and after that ensuring the internships in real companies, just to be sure that companies are covering their human resources with digitalized. And here, of course, AgTech conference comes just to promote latest digital innovation, agriculture, and catalyze adoption of technologies and synergy with agriculture. And another thing that, again, we are having just 4 or 5 years of developing ecosystem, and for 2 years understand the thing how to do it mostly on agriculture field. And now we are launching, we'll organize a hackathon to already involve that people that were in those 2 batches of digital skills, and connect with real cases from companies that will give these challenges to solve them. And after that we'll go to till winter, I think, to acceleration program.
Great, very, very interesting. So as I understand, there is like not much like work on the field so far. It's mainly, let's say you're mainly in the learning path. Is it right?
From technology point of view, yes, and giving the real opportunity where it become real, these needs of knowledge. But from other part of view by agriculture, and I will not comment too much because here it's more about other partners that can come with real solutions or expertise. But mostly local companies are focused on digitalize their solution. There are not many cases that can cover, like mostly as startups, how it's seen.
Okay, thank you. Understood. Now, Zikrillo, you are representing a big country in the Central Asia and the big company, RealSoft. Yes. Tell us about yourself, what you're doing, what solutions you're offering to the market, and how farmers are adopting them.
Thank you very much for organizing this event in front of my colleagues, today's speakers. I think I'm the most shy speaker because I don't have enough experience in the agricultural sector. I just started my career in RealSoft last November. Before that, after graduating in 2015 Westminster University in Tashkent, I worked in university for 2 years in the social department. And after 2 years, I joined to the team of Surhan Cement Invest. This was a cement factory, start from the scratch, and it was a new innovative cement factory in Surkhandarya region. And after that, I thought about changing my profession, as pandemic coronavirus shows that you should at least have 2 professions to survive. And I joined RealSoft team, which is a very good team. And this company is mainly designed for solving issues in terms of agriculture sector. The biggest and, let's say, a monopoly system, Agro-Online, was launched 17 years ago. And this is the main system where farming households and clusters are working on. There is still a lack of usage of technologies like IoT, AI, ML, and other stuff. Because the lackage of high-speed internet and the education of farming households making this issue. So for solving such issues, government is trying to collaborate with the banking sector, with private education schools, and making some laws and regulations which will drive the digitalization of the farming households. So in this example, I want to let's
May I ask you,
yes.
You do work mainly with the private sector, or is it the government-driven trend?
The projects we've been concerning till up to 2020 were mainly with state organizations. But now we are transforming as a private company which want to become global, from local to go global. And we are trying to collaborate with external IT companies from, say, post-Soviet Union countries like Estonia, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. I'm now trying to making a contact with such companies which do have such good experience in automation of farming systems. But still, there are some projects that we can do inside Uzbekistan, and some companies do work in fixing the problems of farming households. I can show in my presentation. I prepared some materials.
Yes, please. Mm-hmm. You have like 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So I will start with our own product. It was named Agro-Online, but now we're changing it to Smart Agro, and we try to do our system very smart by collecting the of farming households and clusters. It will lead to the correct agri-technical measures. We can monitor the land and the crop from the satellite, and based on the collected data, we can offer some recommendations for farming households, which will also lead to the efficient and expected results. This is a set option, and we want to use in our web and mobile app. So from the any point, the farmer or cluster owner can control his yields and ask his workers about the situation, and from remote control do some monitoring of the yield. And in the second point, there is a very good startup, Akhror-Murod. This is like a very good project where you can, where farmers should be educated and they can participate in an online trade market. Plus, they can take the price of agricultural products and get some free consultative education and recommendation. Moreover, this project also started another good project named Chapter, where farmers and clusters can rent or sell their machinery, which is very good. Say you don't have enough machinery, so you can take advantage of this project, download the app, and just register your number and email. So go for looking the required machinery, do an online payment, and just relax, sitting in your office. And the other speakers mentioned about tracking. Our local company, UZGPS Agro, also starts such good projects. You can do machinery tracking for 20 hours, 7 days in any place. The machinery can be blocked and controlled at any time. You can monitor the fuel consumption and block like a stealing procedure. And the last one is a new company. It's a Turkish company, which is really helping Uzbekistan to automate water resources efficient usage. This is a rural agro company. They are doing drip irrigation systems in every field. And I think in near future, the country will automate the efficient usage of resources such as water, human capital, and do progress in automation of farming system.
Great, thank you. Very much interesting projects. Do you have many beneficiaries of those?
Yes, of course. There are a lot of, and plus the collaboration with external IT companies will also push the increase of the beneficiaries from these projects. Almost, at least I can say that all farming households inside Uzbekistan and corporations and agro clusters are using our agro-online system. And by creation of complex and unique solution, which will include usage of water resources, automation of agriculture measures, will lead to the efficient and expected results, which will also benefit these products.
Right. So I think we have the right people on the line now to connect with and exchange experiences.
Yes.
Look, my last question is that World Bank has recently issued an agriculture digitalization index, which evaluates countries on the state of development of 3 foundations: mobile coverage, affordability of mobile services, and non-digital enablers. And I looked into this index to understand where our countries and countries you are from on the radar. More or less, actually, it's about, well, the max is 100, and our countries is about 50, 60. It's the index, but when we split it into the availability, affordability, and non-digital enablers, it's very different. And the interesting part, it's actually availability sub-index, which shows the share of farmland in the country with the mobile coverage. And interesting that the lowest, well, obviously the highest number is for Latvia, Estonia, and the lowest is for Kazakhstan, which is almost 12, and for Uzbekistan, which is 27. How does it feels, or is it really constrained for you when working on digitalization? I will be interested in Marat and Zikrillo's thoughts on this.
Yes, nowadays, for the last years, the government and the president try to publish such law and regulations which will boost automation and digitalization, and will lead to transfer tech of agricultural sector, but yet still we have some leakage of resources and other problems. Say at least high-speed internet is not available in all regions. That's the most big problem, and which will also lead to the educational problem. The person who has at least some internet resources who can download and learn something new from the worldwide experienced specialists. But our agriculture sector, like growing up very slowly, and we do want to solve this issue by making very good applications which will concern every operation from putting the seed to the ground till packaging and transporting it to the final customer. We're just working on this, and we would love to have some partners inside and outside of the country.
Thank you. Marat, what do you think? How crucial is infrastructure for digitalization in your country, considering you are working in the region of Uzbekistan?
I always get nervous when people start talking about digitalization, because digitalization is such a broad concept, you know, and you can't really blanketly assume that if one part of the infrastructure is lacking, then automatically you're not getting services in other you know, aspects of the technology. So let me speak about the you know, so in overall view, right? There's government sector and government, you know, digital push and digital transformation. There's private sector, which is farming, and the private sector is then divided into holdings and corporations, which have a lot of money, and then there's a bunch of smallholder farmers, which, you know, they usually outnumber the large holding and corporation, but they have less access to capital and less ability to pay. So you really have three different segments when you talk about digitalization. So is there a problem for access, internet access in Kazakhstan? Yes, there is, and it will probably continue for the foreseeable future. This is something that the private sector will not solve in and by itself. This is something that's a policy. It's a policy issue. So the government is pushing to install high-speed internet in you know, remote villages and stuff like that. But I mean, technically, it's not an easy task. It all comes down to a point whether it's economically efficient to run high-speed internet to a small village of, you know, say 300 people, and and if it is, how are you going to recoup the cost of that, if you do that? Private sector will not do it. This is a government, again, this is a government issue. The second part is that, do you really need high-speed access internet for farming transformation? I believe you don't, because again, you're looking at two different or three different segments of the market. And in many cases, startups actually fail to see that a technology that's successful in North America, Europe, or elsewhere where developed countries are, is not easily transferable and translatable to a country like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, or any other country. I'm not going to speak for Ukraine, because Ukraine is a bit, actually far more advanced than most of the former Soviet Union, just because historically they have a very strong base, for IT, and they've been able to develop a competitive advantage. But so when you speak about that, then like, say, take in Netherlands or US, the farmer is highly productive. He produces high value crops. He has the ability to pay. They are, they have easy access to credit, and there's no problem for them to buy a drone or a service or a high value, like John Deere equipment. So there's a reason why they're producing a lot of feeding the entire world. In countries like Kazakhstan, farmers rarely have that. So to target that particular segment, private sector and subsector of the private sector, which is smallholder farmers, is unreasonable for any startup. You're not going to get any sort of payback anytime, in the foreseeable future. The only two reasonable sectors that could actually benefit from digital transformation are large holdings, which have the ability to pay, they have international presence and have access to capital, or government. If you target those two sectors, I believe that you are, as a startup, you can still help transform the agricultural sector, and then there's going to be a trickle-down effect on smallholder farmers. And overall, when the government benefits and they know more, they have better tools to make decisions, to make policy. They therefore devise better policy to support farming community. Farming community makes more money. The cycle repeats, and eventually you will get to a point where you don't have 100,000 smallholder farmers producing anything, but maybe you have 30,000 farmers producing anything, but and then 70,000 farmers that are producing something. And they have ability to buy and pay for services offered by startups, and that cycle repeats itself several times. Eventually, you will have a strong core of farmers that are well versed in technologies. They are they're better financed, and then you can talk about, okay, what do we do as an IT or financial community to support that group, and then take it to the next level. But before that happens, I think the main focus for a lot of financial institutions and startups should be these large corporations and government, to help them, to equip them with the right tools, the right technology, so they can devise the right policy, devise the right agricultural and farming methods to sort of help the entire respective agricultural sectors in their countries to rise up above the a certain level, and then become competitive on a global scale. That's what my opinion.
Great, thank you. I think there is still room for some
short, small comment on it, Kateryna. Or actually, I wanted to share experience how we actually leverage this lack of communication for the internet in Ukraine. Actually, if you're talking about big and average companies, there is a growing demand in those super rural areas, either with a different relief, difficult relief, or with too far connections from basic networks. There are private networks for radio frequencies, where the one point of internet connection could be enough to cover the huge territories. In Ukraine, there are different samples of those. Those are LoRa, low radio networks. There are Zigbee networks. There are Sigfox networks. And if you're talking of like nationwide coverage, we got even a private initiative for precision farming. We got in Ukraine 2 companies which are dealing with RealSoft basic stations networks in Ukraine, and they at the moment cover more than 80% of the territory. So there is always a technology in 21st century with which you could like really manage the gap in communication. So you could use repeaters, or you could use satellite straight links to transfer the data. But those private networks are really a big thing, which is going cheaper and cheaper from day to day. And it really is super useful for agriculture. The good example is in Australia and in the US, where the cellular network is not super enhanced, but they're still using a lot of sensors, and it's mainly due to those private radio networks.
Thank you for sharing your experience. So we are running out of time, and I would like to summarize. Time is never enough, and it's a very interesting topic, and as mentioned, very broad. I understand from this discussion that the region is very different. There are very different drivers who put the AgTech forward. In the Central Asia, maybe mainly government. In Ukraine and Moldova, private sector with the support of donor organizations and development partners. Main hurdles for adoption and development of AgTech were named mainly knowledge and skills, high costs, and that farmers don't see the benefit from this to invest themselves, despite if they are not large agricultural holdings, and infrastructure. However, infrastructure can be also solved. So I wish to meet you again and to have a broader event. And thank you, StrategEast, for organizing this event. And wish you success in the future, and hope after this we could communicate and share. As I can see, there is so much to share among the countries, and there are so many issues that can be solved. Thank you very much, and have a great day.